Okay, that's looking good. And just one more message, and then we will start having some fun. Tie rods, comparisons. Yeah, that's interesting. Ah, there we go. Bum 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 bum. Done. Oh, how's that video going? Pretty poorly. Oh, let's just resize that. No idea why that's screwed up. Completely forgot about them. So basically, because of the new shell and the shell wide on the body, I'm having to use the It's 5 PM at the moment, so it's just started raining quite quickly. Well, not pitch black, but let's see if I can show it. Not looking too good out there anyway, so... Yeah, you could say that. Actually, the drifting seems pretty large here, so... Oh. Yeah, all over the place today. I decided not to do any gaming today because I've had too many bad experiences over the last couple of days. Oh. Having nearly total squad wipes in Battletech, so... I thought I'd do something a bit more relaxing. And I say that and wait till I get furious at this. And don't say Fast and the Furious, because I know. Nothing. Let me try one thing. But how can it be nothing? Oh, you know what? Volume. I know what it is. It's this. Let me just delete that. How's that? I didn't even realize that the VLC player I've got there was actually going to be playing audio, so is that any clearer? According to... Yeah, I've got a new FPV cam for the DJI stuff, and because the DJI has HDMI out, I want to give that a go. But it's 28 grams, which doesn't say a lot, sound like a lot, but I mean that car weighs like 200 grams, so that's a good 15% of its weight, and it affects the handling quite badly. Yeah, if I can work out how to mute the audio on those on that video stream, because that's just random videos taken from my YouTube channel. I might try and add that back, but I overslept today and kind of ran out of time to get the template for this stream sorted. I was going to try and get some art in there and other stuff. Actually, the one thing I do want to do though is hit a ping pong ball around, so let's see how that goes. Not very well by the looks of it. Oh. This is hard at the best of times, so... Whoops. I've got to make sure I don't go off the edge of the carpet there, because it can be next to impossible to recover. And because I can't be bothered getting up, I actually do have a second ping pong ball, and a third, and a fourth, all the way up to 6. That reverse delay is really annoying. Oh. Magically, I didn't appear on camera. Yeah, I don't actually have a larger ball now that I think about it, but every time I watch someone play Rocket League, all I can think about is doing this, so... But Rocket League makes it a lot simpler than it actually is in real life, so... I can assure you, like, this is not simple at all. It actually takes quite a bit of skill. But a big ball would definitely be a lot better. I also think I need a better RC car body for this. This car is a bit more tail heavy and harder to control, but it's also angled, which doesn't help, so... Oh, man. I'll get it eventually. It's actually a really good way to get your accuracy up in this. Oh. No, it's... There we go. Hitting it hard is actually really difficult, so... It's very easy to go around it, but not actually hit it. Yeah, that's a good point with the Taj Mahal. Actually, how's Minecraft going? Are you still playing that? I haven't played that game in ages, and I was looking at how popular it was on Twitch the other day, and it was crazy. Ah, so close. I need some more power. There we go. It's even harder when you've got obstacles in the way like that, but... I think I need to be a bit more liberal with the throttle. And perhaps not try and hit it. Maybe trying to hit it dead on is the way to go. Oh. It just carries so much weight at the end of the drift. It's really, really not the easiest thing in the world. Oh, even that. It's just, how could I miss that? There we go. Whoa. What about this? No, too tight. In the last couple of weeks, I haven't touched it in, I don't think, a year or two. What are the updates? Well, has there been any updates to it? Yeah. That seems to be the way of things, though. Like, you find a nice server and then it goes to hell pretty quickly. And then there's always that one guy who you know did it, and you saw him do it, and he just pretends like, oh yes, this is really bad, why did this happen? While he's silently giggling to himself. Maybe I should give it a go. I've got to actually see if I've got all my codes and everything to... Oh, right. That could be interesting. I'm actually more interested in like how it looks graphically and if the performance is improved at all. Wow. What am I thinking? Focus, focus. Yeah. Actually, since going wide on this car, it's been wide on the front. It's been a bit more difficult to control. I kind of liked it when it was a wide back and a narrow front. The car was a lot more pointed. Especially if I'm trying to hit balls around. It's that accuracy is definitely appreciated. What, still 0 on the graphic front? What about the performance? Oh, can I do it? No. I'm probably going to have to collect those balls in a second moment anyway. No, the rear end is about 2 or 3 mil, or it used to be about 2 or 3 mil wider, so you can get it in narrow and wide. And I had narrow on the front purposely, and wide on the back. And it looked a bit silly, but in terms of handling, it was perfectly dialed in for me. But this chassis is a wide, let's see if I can pull it up, a wide, and I still haven't even got wheel offsets matched up on this one, so... Yeah, I suppose I should have read that line a bit better, right? But what can I say, like, I've only just woken up, even though it's like 5 in the afternoon, I've just been tired all morning. Well, let's try and get some proper drifting in. So if I let the drift go for too long, the back end just swings and causes it to oversteer. So on the end of the drift, I really need to let off a bit. But this one seems to curve in nicely with a bit of extra grunt. So it's kind of amazing how much a difference in performance the bodies make, mainly just due to weight distribution and weight. Yeah, they're actually pretty big. This is a fairly wide and a somewhat long chassis as well, but it's still bigger than an iPhone, for example. Then I actually do have... Oh, actually I should get the batteries on the charger for this one. I've got a much smaller one as well that I was going to give a go because I haven't taken it for a run for a while. So this is a smaller one, just a D-Nano. And I should quickly put the batteries on the charger before I forget. This is the one I tend to race at lunch. Yeah, I can't do slow-mo yet. I've kind of worked out how to do it, but there's still some logistical stuff, and I'm actually still waiting for another webcam, which is why the quality is so bad at the moment. Why won't you charge? I'm just going to pretend you're charging. Let's get back to the car. So I might even have to dial the steering exponential around a bit on this and the throttle exponential because I'm not really nailing this how I want to. It doesn't quite feel right yet. And I don't like that I'm going so wide. I went to a weaker motor on this car, and I'm thinking I might actually want or need the extra power, so... Okay, that's feeling a bit better now. So let's just swing the back out and try a bit of counter steer. A tiny bit there. I don't have a proper counter steer set up on this car, so it's not the best for that. Oh, right into the wall. Those barriers actually have sandpaper underneath them, so they stick really well into the carpet, which is kind of nice. I would have never thought to have done that. Okay, so power really sticks the back out a bit more. So I'm basically just trying to screw up on purpose now, just to get a feel for how the car handles in really weird situations. I really hate that I can't go into reverse almost immediately. That irritates the hell out of me. Okay, so this is a really, really fine tipping point by the looks of it. From swapping from left to right. There we go. How's this actually looking on the camera? Not too bad. Just a lot of noise in the image. I wouldn't say the lighting's bright here, and if anything the camera's making it a bit brighter than it actually is, but I tried adding some lighting before, because I've actually got some studio lighting handy here, and it doesn't really help at all, unfortunately. But that's what I get for using a camera design for AI purposes and not for video conferencing. Bit of power there. So I need a good 30 centimeters when I go on the power to do get it to do a 180. Let's see if I can do a power park. Yeah, I can, sort of. So there's a great YouTube channel called Studio 55, I think they are, or Studio 5, or maybe it's Drift 66 or something, where they do nothing but really crazy tricks like parks. And I'd love to know how many cuts they take before they get the final one. But I'd like to get up to the point where I can just like drift around this and then end up in a park. How do I go wide? Why do I need to go? Almost. So it's a bit dicey around obstacles for me at the moment, but I still haven't quite worked out where the J's end. So when you take off, you do go about 30 centimeters, and then it starts to drift in, and that's sort of like a J maneuver. So I really have to get into the right place like there, and then try it, for example. Oh, almost. I'm starting to understand why they normally remove all the stuff on the ground. You mean to put a FPV camera on? Analog cameras work fine because they're only about 10 grams, so you do notice them in terms of performance, but they're not particularly bad. But say you chuck the DJI unit on there, that is getting way too heavy because you have to add batteries and other stuff on top of that. I do have the DJI Cadix, which is really, really light, and I think that's probably at the upper limit of what you want to be adding. The other thing is that when you put these units on, you put them on top of the car, and that makes them really unstable. So they end up being quite prone to rolling, and rolling quite badly. But yeah, it's not just the air unit you have to add, it's also the batteries as well. You can run it off the main power of the car, but it's normally best to separate them out because it turns out those FPV units draw more power than the motor on this car does. So I do have some FPV footage on my YouTube channel. Almost. But yeah, I'm still playing with the CADX unit and working out how to best do that. Because that one you actually have to solder the electrical wires on. It doesn't have a plug like the DJI unit. So I've got the pre-soldered connectors for the DJI Air unit that I can just plug straight in. But because I don't have that for the CADX, I'm still working out what I want to use the CADX for and how I'm going to wire that up. Oh, almost. Actually, one nice thing about this car that most people don't notice, especially when compared to the significantly cheaper ones, is if I just touch the accelerator a bit. Let me bring that in the camera. Oops. It just keeps on rolling after I've come off the accelerator. And that's because it's got actually decent bearings compared to most other cheap RC cars. Yeah, you know, if I had wireless power here, that would be kind of crazy. But it'd make it very, very easy to steal the neighbour's power as well and get all my power usage charged to their account. So maybe that's a good thing. Just feathering the throttle now. I'm just trying to keep it consistent and then just mainly do everything with steering, but maybe I want to try just keeping the steering constant and changing the throttle. Okay, sort of getting it. Definitely going a bit too steep with my approach angle. So this is just me keeping the steering in the same place and then just changing the throttle to get around everything. And for some parts it definitely seems more effective, so maybe I need to combine the two techniques. Yeah, I can dial in some electronic braking like that as well. But I kind of like for drifting especially, you actually need it to keep on going like that, so. I was actually watching a proper drifting channel with real-size cars and simulators, like VR simulators. And the one thing they noticed is they basically let the car steer itself. So they just let go of the steering and it recenters. And unfortunately, I don't have that luxury. So drifting these and keeping control of them is actually a bit harder than a car in real life. So yeah, like a real car, if you let off the steering when it's drifting, it just sort of aligns itself in the direction it's heading, where I actually have to work out which direction it's going manually in my head and then adjust the steering to do that. Yeah, well, it's not bad. It's not the be-all and end-all. I wouldn't mind actually doing some proper racing. But this car's a bit too big on this track for that sort of thing. And that's where that smaller car works. In fact, let's grab the smaller car, the D Nano, and give that a go. Because that one is a bit of fun. Just turn the remote off, because otherwise it's going to complain. Beep. So this small one I'm actually lucky to have because they're actually incredibly hard to get hold of. And I was on eBay the other day and there was a cheap... there was one of these that came on eBay, these small ones, and I grabbed it. I think it had only been online for like 2 hours because they're just so rare. Oh, I've got a bit of ripple in the carpet. There we go. Let's try that. Yeah, so I grabbed it immediately off eBay because... to find one not only that was local. Oh, why is that? Sorry, I just realised I had it on low power. Yeah, so super rare, small RC car, local, and on eBay, grabbed it immediately, didn't even have to think about it. So I'll actually have 2 of these, which will be a lot of fun. And these things handle wonderfully. And for tracks this size, it's like if you actually want to race, this is like the perfect size car for it. And because it takes a while to get up to speed as well, like it actually accelerates. And actually takes a while to slow down because the motor is not the most powerful thing in the world. It's a bit more like actual racing, whereas those big cars you can get away with not braking by just powering through the corner. With this one, if you want to take a really sharp corner, you actually have to slow down. But with all of them, they take forever to reverse, so not happy about that in the slightest. I should get my full track layout again. I'm also kind of surprised at how many bumps there are in this carpet. Maybe I need to stretch it out a bit more. So if I go like full throttle, I can't actually make these turns at all. I shoot really, really wide. So slow down a bit and you can get really, really, really tight. And this is super accurate, this car. With it's not like left or right steering, it's full proportional steering. Well, I might even be able to drift this one. No. There we go. You're just trolling me at this point, I do realise that. But that's fine. I'm only online to have a bit of fun anyway. So I'm actually not a big fan of oval tracks normally because they're pretty boring. But it's been quite interesting, especially with this car just going in an oval and just trying to nail every single corner perfectly. And I've still got a long way to go with this. I'm actually wondering if the transmitter is holding me back at this point. So let's get some. So this thing can actually get up a bit of speed and hit walls. Yeah, that's a bit uneven. Let's see if that smoothed things out a bit. A tiny bit. Okay. That possibly wasn't the best move I've ever made, but almost lost it. Actually, let's see how fast this little thing can go. So I'm never going to actually hit top speed on this course, but that's fine. It's more about, like, to go fast with these things, it's about braking and actually getting tight curves, which is a lot of fun. There we go. So yeah, like I was kind of surprised, like with this I can actually have fun on a small oval track just because it's actually difficult to get really good turning and hit all the apexes just perfectly. But when you do, man, does this thing fly along. And there's that real speed versus turn trade-off, which is kind of nice. So this car has actually probably been more interesting to me than the bigger size cars, but as I said, like these are so rare and they stopped making them, I think, like 10 years ago, that it's hard to find. Like it's hard to find people with Mini Zs locally. To find people with D Nanos is even more difficult. Which is part of the reason why I got a 3D printer, because I want to SLA resin print cars in this scale. Actually, I don't think I mind the bumps too much. They kind of make the car a bit unpredictable. But there's some videos of like 30 of these cars on a single track, and that's pretty crazy action. Especially when they manage to avoid each other or someone will just slice through all the traffic. That's kind of insane. This reverse delay is just the pits. So I'm actually using the factory transmitter with this one because I don't have one that does ASF, but it's not bad, but I'm really not used to it. I actually struggle with it quite badly. Like, I've got a feeling I'd be a lot more accurate with a better transmitter, but I don't want to get a transmitter just for this car, and I also don't want to spend $400 on a transmitter. It has been such a long time since I took this out for a drive. God, I forgot how much fun this was. If I had a pool table, this would probably work pretty well on it. With the bigger cars, even with drifting, it's probably a bit too tight. Maybe if I bumped up the motor power. There we go. Because then you can get to the losing grip stage a lot faster. Which is, I think, the problem I struggle with on this is that I don't have enough motor power to get the car unbalanced. But yeah, I mean, I made a conscious choice with that bigger one to go with a lower power motor because it gave me a lot more control. So let's just try some ovals. Okay, maybe not. You know, I really need to adjust the exponential on this, and I'm not sure how to do it. It can be really, really twitchy. What's funny is that, like, you can get a lot of third-party parts for these smaller cars, but you can't actually get the cars themselves. So there's like heaps of stocks of the body and all the spare parts and everything, but no electronics, no chassis, nothing like that. And the prices for the different parts vary from like $5 to, I saw something sold at one place for $5 and another place for $300. It was insane. But I'm going to blame robot pricing for that. Oh. No problems. If I were you, I'd probably go for the sleep rather than trying to watch this stream. It's going to be very, very boring for a very, very long time. I just need to get some practice in pretty badly. So I'll be glad when I've got another chassis for this car. Maybe might even try and make the other one a four-wheel drive, which I've seen some mods for. It requires a lot of Dremling, and it means that I could potentially destroy the chassis, but might be worth it. Or I might even look into how I can swap this over to something a bit more modern in terms of receiver. Because if I could use my full-size transmitter, oh wow, that'd be mind-blowingly good. Actually, let's go the other way so I don't overburden the suspension and get too used to going in one direction. So yeah, definitely love the D-Nanos. They're was a bit pricey, but definitely worth it. Although, I mean, the smaller you go, the more expensive they get, I've found. So, and the new one was only the price of a normal brand new Mini Z, so that's basically a steal. I think I'll be going for the McLaren 12C body on that one. So, and this one, I upgraded some of the bearings, but not all. But this has also got the one where if you accelerate and then go on the brakes, you get quite a bit of... the car keeps on going forward, which is great. So you don't have to be on the accelerator the entire time, especially when coming into the turns. You can just let the car brake itself, which gives you a bit more control as well, which is good. So let's get back to figure of 8. So this one, if I accelerate on while turning. Definitely wants to dive in, which is good. I found this is another with these ones. The chassis or the body also changes the handling quite a bit because it changes where the weight is. So some of them will get lighter on acceleration because they've got more weight at the back. This car seems a bit more balanced in that regards. But I do love my Mazda 787s. I just think they look very, very good, especially the B variant with all the different colours. Oh, back up. Give it a sec. There we go. The reverse delay on this car is actually worse than the normal Mini Zs. In that if you tap it, the timer resets and you've got to wait, I think it's 5 seconds before you can reverse. So these cars are definitely a lot more about tactics and patience. They are quick, not as quick as a Mini Z, but still close. But you can't use most of that power as well because you can't turn and becomes a bit uncontrollable. There we go. Okay. And actually, you don't want to be on the power all the time with these cars. You probably want to be at about the 80% mark. And this is true for most RC cars I've found. Anything above that is you get extra speed, but the car starts to become pretty unstable. And with this car especially, you can use that extra 20% to steer sharper. Why won't you move? There we go. So I've just got a crease in the track. There we go. So this is the same carpet as a in the back of a car. It's just literally, it's not bed liner, but I think they use it as sound deadening in the car, and sometimes as carpet. And it's basically a synthetic plastic carpet, which is great because it allows the tires to slip a bit. Like I've got some yoga mats under this, so some knockoff RCP track, and that stuff just grips too much. So even this small car without much power can flip by accident because there's just too much grip available. Which means you've got to go and collect it, and it means if you stuff up a turn, you normally flip over. Whereas if you've got not enough grip, then you just tend to slide out, which is a lot more forgiving when you're practicing, and means you don't have to stand up nearly as often. So there's those sharp turns under power again. And let's back up a bit. There we go. Okay, so I have to be a bit more careful with how I do that and go. It'd be nice if it was aerodynamics that was making the turns sharper, but it's definitely, I just think, weight distribution and power. But it's kind of interesting that the turning on this car is actually better at higher speeds because of that. I kind of like that, where you want to go slower because you think it's safe, but you actually end up losing grip and it's actually more dangerous. So there's like a minimum speed you've got to be doing the entire time. So if you're going slow, you actually have different lines to if you're going fast. So if you hit a bit of traffic or you get held up behind someone, it completely changes about how you go about racing. Okay, so let's get back to loops. Because I think steering strength might actually be playing a role here. So when I come around a corner, I can't twist back the other way quick enough. So I don't know if its car just doesn't have enough steering strength, or what it is, or if I've got a bit of slack in the steering. So dead straight is not dead straight on the transmitter. In fact, I can test that. So if I go left and then go straight, it pulls to the left. Now if I go right and then I accelerate, oh, it still pulls to the left. Okay. So let's just adjust for that. Okay, that looks dead straight now. Okay, so I've also got to nail the acceleration at the right time, because I don't necessarily want the car to accelerate. I actually want the back end to lose grip. And there's a very, very subtle distinction, it seems, with this car between the two. So I actually probably want to slow down and then accelerate, so I've got more of a shock to the wheels. So let's try that now. Let's go a bit faster. Yeah. And then give it a burst of power on the turn. 1, 2, 3. There we go. So if I just lay into it at 100%, I go wide. But it seems if I come off the power and then back on it, let's try that again. Yeah. So if I'm at 50% and then accelerate, it seems to do what I want. And as you can see, that was a rather tight turn there. So I think the surface is playing a bit of or being a bit of a problem, just given the amount of tiny bumps and imperfections. Like this has probably only got 2mm of ground clearance underneath it, so like a half a millimeter or even a 1mm bump is really going to unsettle the car. But let's bring this one in and go back to some drifting. So that one's off, its battery is charging. Let's fire you up. Cool, and let's turn on our transmitter.
Welcome to Noble.
Make sure the foam in the steering wheel is working fine. So as you can see, this car handles completely differently. But then again, I've got some very, very exceptionally good drift tyres on it. And on that small car, I was losing grip on the rear end with just really, really hard rear tyres. But at the end of the day, they were still grip tyres, and they basically feel like rubber bands. I'm sure if I swapped it out to something with a little less grip, it would be a little more sideways. I just don't know. It seems like there was a drift variant of that car, but I don't know if that was just a custom model that someone made, or if that was actually a model you can purchase. And I'd love to know what tyres it was using, because drifting at that scale could be a lot of fun, as that car basically fits in your pocket. So the trick to drifting with this car, right in the middle here, is to come off the accelerator just to go straight. And then once you do so, it drifts forward a bit, but then it gives you the opportunity to reverse the drift in a more controlled manner. Whereas if you just let it go from the previous drift and carry over to from left to right, it's a little less controlled. Because you've really got to do a flick, whereas if you just come off, it straightens up, and then you can immediately power on into a second drift rather than continuing the first drift. Whoops. And I can't say I'm a master of drifting by any stretch of the imagination, but I'm definitely not that bad. Or sorry, I should say I'm not bad, rather than not that bad. But that's the point of these weekend weekend videos, is basically to just get across drifting and to try a couple of new things, and allow people to like pop on and ask questions as appropriate. So thought I was going to make that. It's been actually a long time since I did, probably about 6 months since I was doing Mini Z and Mini Z drifting. I kind of went on to the full scale 1/10 and even I want to say 1/6 scale models. So I got myself an Unlimited Desert Racer from Traxxas, which is about 1/6. They don't actually officially list the scale on that one, but wow, I didn't realize if you're not in the US with Traxxas, they're an absolutely horrible company. So I tried to buy some parts from Hong Kong because you couldn't get the parts locally. And they weren't allowed to ship Traxxas parts internationally because of distribution deals. So basically, I wasn't able to get parts I needed to fix and repair the car and actually make it perform well. And don't get me wrong, it doesn't handle that badly out of the box, but it was quite obvious that they'd left a lot on the table. So yeah, I ended up buying parts from the US on eBay from people who weren't distributors, and that seems to be the best way to get parts. Or in most cases, to be honest, I just actually went with third-party parts. The Traxxas parts themselves were actually pretty crappy. And I'm kind of surprised to see that the company has such a big following and a large name in the US when, to me, they feel like a middle to low rate RC car manufacturer. Although I've got a Tecmo as well, so an EB410, so a four-wheel drive 10th scale, and that thing is absolutely incredible. Seriously impressed with that. Likely one of the best RC cars I've ever owned. And just handles like a dream. Out of the box, no tuning. Hard to go wrong with that one. So part of the problem I had with drifting earlier was that I had the two drift obstacles very, very close together. And given that they're also not round, it doesn't help. Doesn't make it impossible either. It's just a slight annoyance. But you just have to be careful with where you're looking at. So I'm really trying to hang drift or string drifts together here. And that seems to be working pretty well. But it does have the tendency to go wide unless you're on the drift almost like half a millisecond before you need to do it. Whereas braking the drift by coming off the accelerator seems to be much tighter and controllable, and also allow you to recover some of the throttle position. So because you come off the throttle, it doesn't take nearly as much throttle to maintain. Basically, when you're drifting, you creep up on the throttle. You keep on pushing it more and more and more. And because you're pushing the throttle more and more and more, you can actually end up running out of throttle, and you have to reset that at some point. So by going for two separate drifts, by taking a pause in between the two objects, I can do that reset then, and almost always be at the 50% mark on the throttle, which is generally where I try to aim. Well, I actually try to aim to be anywhere between 1/3 to half engaged on the throttle, because that's just where my finger likes to be on this transmitter. There we go. So, yeah. That's that asymmetric curve thing I don't like at the moment. So let's go back to that. And I'll try and make it a bit more obvious. So, yep, coming off brake about there. Off brake. Braking. Braking. So that was a bit too close. I probably should have strung those drifts together. So let's try and string the drifts together now and see what that looks like. I actually cheated. I came off the throttle slightly then. So wow, I'm really not doing too well today, but that's fine. I'm not doing this competitively, so I'm training to become competitive. I'll also have to. I'm actually waiting on a new two-wheel drive drift car to come, so that should be here next week, along with some other parts. One of the problems with this car is there's a bit of extra slack on the CVDs, and that means when I hit the accelerator, the rear wheels don't engage immediately. They can move about 1/8 of a rotation, and I haven't quite determined if that's a good or a bad thing. It definitely means if I'm trying to turn, the wheels can slip a slight bit, but I mean I'm on a drift track, so that doesn't matter. But the more interesting part is the wheels don't engage immediately, and I'm not sure if that is important or not. or if I even need to be concerned about a 1/8 rotation engagement. But either way, I needed some spare parts, so it was easier just to order some better quality parts. There we go. So I'm also running on AAA lithium-ion batteries, and they seem to be going pretty well. I actually destroyed 2 of them by leaving them in the car and left the car on overnight, so they drained to near 0 volts. But I ordered like another 20 of them. And I get the question a lot, like, why don't you use 9-mys, and like, why bother with LiPos? And that's because if I've got a 10-cell charger and I only need 2 LiPos, in a single go I can charge 5 batteries, which means 5 runs. Whereas if I've got, I need 4 9-mys, then that's 8 batteries, so there's going to be 2 wasted, and I only get 2 runs. And the 9-mys don't run for nearly as long. And I've had bad experiences with the 9-mys, that they get hot. They're actually pretty dangerous in themselves. Like, there used to be a whole lot of like, LiPos are the new 9-mys, basically. Back in the early days, people used to be really concerned about them blowing up. People also wonder about, like, having to maintain their LiPos and losing their life, and what if you get really bad ones from China? And it's like, well, I bought 20 off China, and if they're bad and they only last half as long as good batteries, then not only did I save money, I actually ended up with more battery life than going with a better pair. So as long as I'm getting like half an hour off a single charge, I don't really care about the batteries too much. I don't need the power. None of this is 100% throttle engagement, so even that was only 50%. That's 50% basically. That's 100%. And I don't need 100%. Although, so actually let's try with 100%. Let's chuck a bit more power into this, because I want to see how tight I can do this. Yeah, so I mean, if I'm going 100%, I basically lose control of the car. Anything more than 50% is just turning on the front. Yeah, so that's 50%. That's a bit more. And as you can see, it's almost turning on the tyre, which, if you're trying to go around an obstacle, is just not useful. This was actually one of the reasons why I went to the weaker motor in the first place. Not only does it give me better battery life, but if I'm not using 80% of the motor's output, there's no point in having it available. It just means I've got to do a whole lot of tweaking and tuning on my transmitter. And then that reduces the amount of granularity or the resolution I get out of the trigger pulls. And so I'm less accurate. So it's better just to get all the parts working together as best as I can, and choosing the parts for the purpose rather than choosing the parts for power. And for anyone wondering, this is an MA030 from Kyosho, running with an NB4 controller from FlySky. So one of the good, nice cheap race grade transmitters. I highly recommend it. If you're going to go past the beginner level, there's a couple of options at the intermediate level. But I'd say skip it and just go straight to the NB4, because it costs just as much as going to the intermediate level, but you effectively get pro level features. And the low latency for the NB4 is just absolutely phenomenal. Like, I use the NB4 on a lot more than just Mini Zs, and it works well on everything. I don't think I'll ever use it on a petrol car, because petrol's really not my thing. But I have used the petrol features for various things. One of those things was to keep the drift cars, always accelerating, even if it's just really, really slowly. So if you left off the throttle, the car would still inch forward, just to see what that would do. And that had interesting effects. So I'm going to try and hit the ball around while I'm drifting, just as a target, and to practice a bit of dynamic drifting. So when doing any sort of training, there's the temptation to do the same thing over and over again. But in real life, say you're trying to hit a ball, that ball's not always going to be in the same place. So you really want to try and vary it up and go left to right so you don't end up overtraining yourself for a particular scenario. And that's why you'll see me trying to swap from left to right. And it's actually the reason why I got the balls out in the first place. So let's chuck that there. We'll drift around here and we'll go around the outside. And I think we'll go for a long drift, which I can't do. So it's actually kind of interesting. I tried two-wheel drive drifting, and that's radically different. And it seems like going wide and doing long drifts is a lot easier with the two-wheel drive cars. With the all-wheel drive cars, they seem to be really, really close. I'm not even going to say close drifting. So two-wheel drive drifting seems to be really good at long, wide drifts and really, really close on spot drifting. Whereas all-wheel drive seems to be really good at this mid-range, high-powered stuff. And I do love the look of all-wheel drive drifting, but I do still kind of like all-wheel drive drifting. I do want to get the counter-steered kit for this, however, or actually make my own counter-steered drifting kit for this, because essentially what it does is it makes the rear wheels go fast on the front wheel drive. And because this has a front one-way diff in it, that means the front wheels are actually not actively driving the chassis. And so it effectively acts as a two-wheel drive car. But the more angle you put into the car, the more the all-wheel drive kicks in. So what happens is, if your car starts to go sideways enough, it starts to turn into all-wheel drive and the front wheels pull you back straight. Until you go straight enough that the rear wheels overpower the car, and then it starts to go sideways again. So essentially what it is you've got two opposing forces, which is the car's trying to force you out to go out sideways, and your front wheel's forcing you to go straight, and you basically get auto drift because the natural, center of balance in the turn for the car is, rather than turning, is to actually be going sideways. So it's sort of like cheating, but I'm interested to see if it feels like a compromise between an all-wheel drive and a two-wheel drive, or if it feels like more like two-wheel drive drifting, but with assistance. Actually, my gyros should come on Monday as well for the new drift car. So that'll be a lot of fun. Okay, we're going to do some oval drifting now, because I'm getting a bit too used to, and in fact, let's go around the other way. I'm getting too used to doing the one thing. So I'm also going to try and come off the throttle at the end and then slide into place as well. Which is one of the steps if I want to do some drift parking. So actually, how long have we been going for? About an hour, which is pretty good. And I'm really not doing well too at the moment, so let's see. Actually, let's just check one thing. So these cars can be quite prone to sporadic behavior when they're not perfectly tweaked. So if you lose a spring or a spring slightly to the left or right, that can cause performance issues. And having a look here, I don't think it's affecting it, but one of my springs is slightly off on the front. So it's easy just to fix up with a screwdriver or your fingers. And just put the body back on. Cool. So what I think I'll do is get probably about another 5-10 minutes of drifting in, and then I'm going to end it there. Just the reason is Oh, those cables are in the way. I'm actually starting to lose my voice a bit. And there's not many people asking questions, so which is fun in itself, but if I'm going to lose my voice, it's going to be very, very boring if it's just me drifting in the middle there. Okay, and don't set the transmitter on the accelerator while you're trying to reattach the body. Why are you not popping out? There we go. So you need to be depressed into there. You go in there. I mean, if anyone does have questions, feel free to ask, but I've got a feeling it's the same usual crowd that's here. And I've probably talked them to death about these cars in the past. There we go, that's better. The suspension's way, 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 way soft. Okay, let's get back to drifting. Oh yeah, I still need a lot of practice. And in fact, I think I actually prefer my green McLaren to my white and red one. I mainly got this one because it looked good, not because I actually wanted to race with it. So I actually prefer the smaller, tighter green body, which is just a standard McLaren. Okay, so let's go back to ovals and so yeah, going back to practice, it's important not to do the same thing and focus on the same thing, but varying up the different scenarios and understanding how your car behaves under every single circumstance. And you can't do that if you just try and do the same turn every single time. Like, I don't actually mind if I screw up a turn or something like that because it gives me more insight as to how the car behaves under different conditions. Or if I catch like a ripple on the carpet and it changes the steering, it's like, can I actually react fast enough to that? And I guess that's the difference between playing in an RC car simulator, which I do a bit of as well, or versus real life. So I've played VRC Pro quite a bit, and it doesn't really seem to, like if you get a divot or something in the road, it doesn't seem to emulate that quite well. Like, it's almost there, but it still feels like there's something missing in that simulation, and I can't quite work out what it is. It gets you close to where you need to be, but it's definitely distinctive to real life RC cars. Well, that's actually, so we're actually getting pretty close with the nose to those obstacles now, which is where I want to be. I basically want to be able to drift and put the car where I want it to go, and then try and aim to get as close to the obstacles as I can. Yeah. At the moment, I think I've got a bit of target fixation, so if I'm aiming to be like a centimetre away from something, I end up diving into that, because that's what I'm looking at, so. And if it looks like I'm hitting doing really, really poorly down here at the bottom of the screen, it's because I've actually got my leg covering most of the track there, so I'm doing it purely by sound rather than by sight. Oh, okay, close. So I'm going to work out on breaking out of a drift, so we're going to go for some more high-powered stuff. And just see how the car behaves coming out of a drift now. So let's engage. Yeah, I think it's these these drift tires. I probably want to drop to the LF3s rather than the LF5s, and see how the car behaves like that. But one of the things I definitely like about this setup in terms of the carpet and the tires is that going faster doesn't really help you at all. So it's more about like really good throttle control and getting the steering right. Ah, so close. So we're back to continuing the drifts at the moment. I had to break that drift just to get my car in. Bit of extra power, and as you can see, that just cooked the rear end and made it oversteer. So let's try that again. Yep, should have broken the drift there. And that red and white barrier in the middle now is starting to take a bit of damage. I'll have to re-clip that up in a sec. Okay, we're going to try giving it some squirts of power. I typically don't like to do this, but this is how most beginners actually end up driving their cars. Because it gets a back end out really, really nicely, but I kind of like the... I kind of like getting the steering and throttle right, and then just letting go and basically letting the car go through the motions. Yeah, actually let's try and do a 180 while I'm here. So let's do a full power 180. Yeah, okay, so just turning and slamming on the spot doesn't actually give really good response, and I was wondering about that. I think what I have to do is get a bit of speed up to about 50% and then give it a burst of power. So let's give that a go. Yeah, that's a lot more controllable. Although that goes more off to the side than anything else, so... So it really seems that it's not just about how the car handles at any given throttle position. It's about where the car was in terms of acceleration. Or I should say throttle, and where it's going. So changing speeds at different speeds definitely seems to change the characteristics of the car. Turned in too early. I actually stopped that drift halfway to align the car, and I was just at the wrong angle. So let's try that again. Well, I've done some pretty tight turns in the last couple of runs, which is good. Maybe I'm starting to achieve what I want to, which is those nice tight turns, but I've found you won't learn anything in 1 or 2 lessons. What you have to do, at least for me, is go sleep on it. And I'm always amazed at how much better my performance is after going away and thinking about it for a bit. So actually varying the throttle a bit and focusing more on a steady steering position. But I'm also noting that I'm maxing out the steering. So maybe what I want is more turn circle out of this car. Which I think is hard to do, but I'll have to look into it. Maybe there's some tricks I can pull. Whoops. Okay, with that I think I'm going to end up here. I need to improve the camera and the overlay as well as a bunch of other stuff. But next weekend we should probably do another one, or I should be doing another one of these streams, and I might have some more interesting topics and a new car or two to show off at that time. So thanks for coming, and I'll see everyone then.